give yourself the benefit of the doubt about wondering if I did something wrong or I said something that was dumb, and you're beat yourself up about something and you have no reason to, because whoever it was you said it to never thought that. So again, that's a whole aspect of uncertainty and just filters. Another is mood health, and that does, get into the depression side. And I have naturally a lot of lived experience with this, having contended with a number of bouts myself. And, we've all been through all the things that we have in our lives. I've learned, through experience, how to deal with it and, catch it. And the same as we talk about earn confidence and worry before you sink too much into the quicksand. Do the things that you need to get yourself out.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Rebel Love podcast. Today, my guest is Matt Zinman, a difference maker devoted to personally enrich the lives of at least 100 million people by 2025. His new book, Z-isms, Insights to Live By, is based on his experiences as an entrepreneur, an athlete, a single parent, caregiver, and nonprofit founder. He's also the host of Insights to Live By, a podcast that invites guests to share their own life lessons. Welcome, Matt. Thanks so much for being here today.
It's great to be with you, Talia. Thanks for having me. I'm so looking forward to this.
Me too. I'm glad we made it happen. So I like to do this with all my guests before we get too far into any subject matter. I'd love to hear your story. What happened for you? Tell us. Let's see if we can condense your life story, and to how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll definitely condense it. So I'm in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, and it's summer here. It's not quite as cold as where you are. And I grew up playing ice hockey. That was a big influence on me. I traveled with Team USA on some tournaments and things. Never went pro, but that was a big part of my life. And went into the field of communication management, public relations, advertising, and then a big intersection for me was in 2002, which is when at that time I became a single dad. And I'm remarried now, but I was, my son Jake was 2 at the time, and it was important to me to be a 50% dad. So I quit my job and started my own company, and haven't looked back ever since. In terms of being an entrepreneur. And in 2007, I started a nonprofit called the Internship Institute. And that focuses on apprenticeships and all things work based learning, mainly setting up programs, also helping veterans in transition, disadvantaged youth. It really depends on the grant. And this past year, things took another turn with the pandemic, because not a lot of those kinds of programs were happening here. And it had really kind of come to the point where I was also ready for a transition, and it just so happened that the book came out originally at that time, and so I had to make some adjustments as well. But then since then, somewhat unexpectedly, I started my own podcast, as you mentioned, Insights to Live By. It's my 1 year anniversary of that podcast coming up now. And
Congratulations.
thank you. Thanks. 65 episodes in 1 year, and now weekly. So that led to me continuing to lean into really creating a new career for myself, reinventing. And I'm now creating and have created courses in and around the book, for everything from mindset to well-being, relationships, and into legacy and your why and law of attraction and all those sorts of things. So the big course is 29 days, about an hour a day, and I just finished that, so I'm really psyched. And now I'm on the other side of, okay, I can pick my head up and now connect people to it. So so appreciate the timing being here with you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited to hear about it. So, we're going to talk a little bit today about how to outsmart your worries and anxieties with earned confidence. But
Right.
before we get too far into that, I really want to know, what is a Z-ism,
Sure.
and tell us a little bit about what was the driving force behind creating the book.
Yeah, thank you, Talia. Well, Z-isms or Z-isms, wherever you want to pronounce it, however the letter is pronounced. Those are your life lessons. They're insights to live by, and we all have them, and we all find ourselves giving similar advice to different people. Whatever those pearls of wisdom are considered to be your Z-isms in this case. And in terms of writing the book, I had a certain inflection point the year before last. My son Jake, you fast forward from he was 2 back in '02, right? Now he's off to college, and I was between grants, and I think a lot of people say, well, I want to write a book, and do you follow through or you don't? And I really considered, well, this is something I would regret not doing, and the answer was absolutely. And so I really just got into action just to see what I had, put my head down, and over a number of days was like, yeah, this is something that's fully formed. It's not a blog. It's more than that. And there are a number of these concepts like earned confidence that really are the grounding principles. That's chapter 1, that I have really put to use for myself over the years, and I don't really hear people talk about it quite the same. And in a way, I felt something of a responsibility to share it, and I'm so glad I did. So
Yeah, tell us a little bit about
yeah.
what earned confidence is. And I love that. I don't know. I just love those words together. I think it's a really, I mean, I've got an idea of what it is, but I'm interested to know how we earn it.
Yeah, well, we all have earned confidence. I mean, it really speaks to the fact that, look, all of us have been through everything that we have in our lives, wherever we are. And a lot of that has to do with resilience and overcoming things. It also has to do with all the things we've achieved. And up until now, we're here. We've made it. Whatever it is that we've come through, we're for the most part past. And so that's what you've earned. You've earned that confidence. And what's critical about it is that it's a grounding principle to stay present. Because if you know, which you do clearly, since we're here, that you're capable of overcoming everything that comes your way, you can deal with what happens to you in real time, then you don't have to get caught up in things that are not happening in the now, like worry and anxiety or making
Hmm.
assumptions, all those future uncertainties. You really have to catch yourself where you're bringing yourself out of the present into those things that are uncertain to happen. And then of course the same thing applies for allowing past baggage to weigh you down and any of that negativity. So earn confidence is a reminder to stay present.
Mm. So I was talking to a friend a while ago, and I can't remember the exact conversation, but I said something like, and we've both been through phases like this where I'm like, I don't know, I've just lost a bit of confidence. Like I'm not quite sure anymore. I was doing really well, I was kind of on top of the world. And like you said, like things happen and then it accumulates and you're like, oh, all of a sudden I feel confident. Or things that happen for me are like, someone will ask me about something that I know a lot about, and I'll start talking about it. And they'll say, and then I hear myself talking, going, huh, I kind of, I didn't realize I knew so much. And like they're really intently listening, like I'm the authority on it. And you're like,
Right.
oh, I didn't realize I was in that position. But then things equally can happen where something happens or something doesn't go exactly the way you want it to go. And then you're like, you lose the confidence and somehow quicker than you earned it. So, what happens in those situations? What can we do in those situations?
Well, I think we're talking about two different kinds of confidence in that way, and we all waver. I mean, I'm we're all human. I struggle with confidence just the same at any given time. Uh, but earned confidence is something that's it's always there. Wherever you are in life, and just to go one step further, and really to its origin had to do with my mom. I mean, you mentioned in the introduction my being a caregiver, and it's been quite a few years now, but my mom tragically had a routine surgery in the early '80s and contracted HIV
Oh, wow.
through a blood transfusion. And she was one of the first heterosexual men at the time to get it. And there was no cocktails or anything back then. She really saw her through the worst of it over those years. Now she's passed over 25 years now at this point. So as terrible as it sounds, it's, again, it's been, a long time ago. But for anyone who's been through anything like that, you've seen someone through and a terminal illness, or anything that really takes you through some of that anguish. Well, for my part, any number of times that we thought we were going to lose her, and then you'd go through that emotional turmoil, only for her to pull through, which is, wonderful. Have more time with her, and that she'd recover. But then you'd look back, even what I do to myself, in
Right.
terms of all of it. And after that happening a number of times, you really just get to the point of, I have to, what will be, and I have to deal with what's really happening. And I naturally, the circumstances being what they are, I mean, that's certainly the worst, I've ever had to overcome, or get through, those period of years. But that's a source of earned confidence, and the same goes for anybody else. And again, it's that reminder of, it's almost somewhat the opposite of, in the present. That's an example of worrying about something that has yet to happen. You just can't do it. And it just reminds yourself that you can. It's really about resilience, and about grounding yourself in the present. Now, to your question, day to day, yeah, we all have to, work on ourselves. We're all constant work in progress, and in our growth. And uh, sometimes we feel more confident than others, but you can't argue with coming through everything that we have, and having a lot to show for it.
Yeah. That must have been incredibly devastating to go through that experience. And um, so it sounds like the when you refer to earned confidence, it really is the kind of that the the journey of, like you said, the resilience, the battle scars that make you stronger. Is that
Right.
kind of
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people can point to any number of events in their lives that were terrible, in real time. And then they can look back, having come and being on the other side of it, and recognize, what, that happened for a reason, or you know that led to this or that, and if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have this. And so it's hard, when you're in any given moment and actually dealing in real time with those difficult circumstances. But again, with earned confidence, you can have those as um reference points, to be able to say,
mm,
well, when this happened that was terrible to me, now I can look at that and it's this. So that when things are actually happening that are, difficult, and I'm not saying in any way that you should be ignoring what you have to deal with. I mean, when there's no other way but through whatever those circumstances are. But it's also good to have that objectivity from the experiences, to say, you know what, I mean, this is terrible right now, but on the other side of it, I'll get there just like I have everything else. And something good will come of this at some point, whatever that might be, if
mm.
hopefully.
So what does let's just keep exploring this earned confidence. What does earned confidence look like in romantic relationships?
Yeah, well, I think that it has, number one, a lot to do with not being codependent, in
Right.
terms of having earned confidence. You're two people coming into a relationship as much as you can be, whole. Of course, leaning on each other, and this, some minor could, I mean, it's natural to have some of that, but for the most part, you stand on your own 2 feet, and you have your own role in a relationship. And um, whatever that might be, in terms of how, for example, you might, divide and conquer. Some people are, well, for my wife and I, better at one thing versus another, and we know whose department is what. So, that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how did you kind of coin this term, earn confidence? How did you kind of start framing it in this way that you have in your book?
Honestly, Talia, going back, all the way to my mom, is when I started thinking about it, through that experience. That really is the origin of it. And, again, as there's an example, as terrible as that all was, something good came of it, that we can be having this conversation and I can, share this with you. It just came from that life experience. I didn't kind of, scratch my head and be like, what am I going to coin this? It just really, it just is what it is. But again, I think that it's very easy for us to get caught up in our habits around worrying and being anxious about things. And to me, earn confidence is kind of that logic formula to remind yourself that you can deal with the real, and that you can outsmart worry and
Mm,
and to whatever degree anxiety that's not, chemical imbalance anxiety, just general anxiety.
mm.
um that's the thought.
Can you give us an example of how we can use this, like you said, as a prompt, like when we are experiencing anxiety? Because it's interesting. I've heard a lot more people speak about this in the pandemic. There's a lot of anxiety through the roof. I've heard that a lot, and I mean, it's a pretty what's the word, tumultuous time. People. We're in lockdown again. I'm not sure what your situation is where you are, but I know that where I live, we've been in and out of lockdown, and even though kind of like Melbourne, that's where I am, we're getting used to it, sort of like everyone's like, okay, here we go again. You know,
Right.
it still affects your psyche, right? The anxiety is something that we can't control. It's this outside thing that's happening. What's a prompt that we can use that you just mentioned in the framework that you just mentioned, if we
Sure.
are experiencing anxiety that's not chemical as well?
Well, I think that, the pandemic is a very unique time in all of our lives, and it's just thrown so much by the wayside. And I don't, I want to just, I think we all know what that is. I don't have to necessarily, regurgitate, what we're all going through. And there's some natural anxiety that goes with that. That is something to be expected. Again, it's kind of a no other way but through. Um,
Mm.
and I think there is an underlying mental health pandemic that's also surfacing and will continue to surface. And I know you know that depression is something that has also been a big part of something I've contended with, and I'm an advocate for, and also why I'm so um, dedicated to, these different kinds of concepts, for my own well-being, just the same. Um, to your question, I think when we're addressing worry, and it's something that's a habit, and we're not going to catch it at all times. In fact, a lot of times, just to break the habit, you have to look back after the fact, so that when you worry about something and then it never comes to pass, that's when you really have to stop and evaluate, what did I do to myself? What did I do to maybe the friends I called, or whatever else that I might have done that was completely unnecessary? Of course, friends are there to be there, to support you, but this was a phantom problem ultimately that occurred as a result of unnecessary worry. And so when you can take stock after the fact and realize, wow, I I really did a number on myself, it's going to help you the next time recognize when that's starting. You can really, nip it in the bud so it doesn't get as much out of control. And then, just like anything, and taking practice in and around, mindfulness, gratitude, all
Mm.
these life skills, practicing our own confidence and staying present is, just the same.
Mhm, mhm. In your book, you have a chapter on swimming with the current. Is this? Can you tell us a little bit about that technique?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of different meaning to it. One of it is rooted in earned confidence, and a lot having to do with trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, making decisions more gut driven than, getting caught up in analysis paralysis, for example. Um, to me, one application just from a practical standpoint is from as an entrepreneur. And when I feel like, even on any given day, something's kind of taking a turn, it's, you feel like you're coming up against, just that experience, you're banging your head against the wall, or any of those cliches, I guess, that come to mind for people, push the boulder up the hill or what have you. You really have to tune into your intuition and ask yourself, well, what's going on? What does that mean? It could be how you're managing your day. It could be a relationship. It could be a conversation that's going the wrong way, and just to ground and yourself and be like, well, what does it mean to turn around? That's just kind of part of instinct and flow. And I can't say, everybody has their own belief system. I mean, I certainly believe in the flow, the law of attraction, energy exchanges, and how we affect one another. Um, other people, and recognizing how people affect us. And that's a whole other section of the book in and around energy management. And swimming with the current goes just the same, because of that energy exchange also comes into play when you're dealing with others. Um, from a relationship standpoint, that's a whole different dynamic. And I started to touch on it before. My wife Erica and I, we're both been married before. We both have kids that we've raised, and so it helps to have the experience and have been around the block. But I will say that I do think that when it comes to you know domestic partnerships, relationships, whether it's marriage or living together, even if you're just friends and roommates living together, you always it helps. I want to be absolute here, but it helps to know who has what ball. The more that you can divide the responsibilities of your lives together as to who does what, who's in the lead, the the more you're eliminating potential problems.
Mm.
So, I think, Erica and I, really have not had any, major argument in
Mm.
in our 5 years together. I mean, things might get a little tense. We might, you know, get a little annoyed with one another. But I mean, I know what a fight is. I've there hasn't been one in this relationship, and
Yeah, right.
yeah, and a lot of it has to do with she handles the finances. I'm very happy for her to do that. I don't want to fight about it. I don't want to deal with receipts. I don't want to deal with the taxes. It's just not my thing. She handles all things having to do with the house, and she's very much into that and her hobbies and everything. I cook. I'm the chef of the house. So when it comes to anything having to do with food, feed the family, all that, that's my department. And it really is just very evenly divided. It doesn't sound sexy, I guess, when you break it out like that. But when there's little left to argue about, there's nothing. Arguments don't happen. And when it comes to things that are the in between, if you can if you can outsource things in your life, that's always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then what are the hot spots? Like she is not able to deal with tech support and customer service or any of those kind, like she loses patience in 3 seconds flat. I
Yeah.
have all the patience in the world. So, that's no problem for me. And then when you are finding yourself in conflict, whatever that is, again, against the current, it really comes down to who has more to lose or to gain. Someone has to yield. Otherwise, you're just going to be you know going down however far into a negative experience of an argument with one another. The more you can nip it in the bud and just be like, okay, I this is more important to you, or whatever that it might be. I mean, there's just no specific in the moment, but if you can make that choice, that also helps.
Mm-hmm. Can
Who
I
is
ask you?
the current in that
Yeah, can I
in
ask you a
that way?
question about your wife?
Sure.
Um, has there been? Do you think it's worked because there hasn't been any conflict about who wants to do what? Has there been anything where you both don't like doing it, and then what do you do in that situation where you're like, we both don't really want to do it? Do you outsource it?
Yeah, I mean, if we can. I mean, there's really there's really nothing that I can think of. I mean, because like I'm in the groove with it. Like,
Right.
do I love handle, all the chores around the house or things that I do? No, not my favorite, but it's just kind of, it's my department. So, I feel like she does a ton of, we both do a ton of things. We feel like whatever it is, though evenly divided, that, we do our share. And the kids, they're teenagers now. My son's 21 in a
Mm-hmm.
couple of months, and her daughter's 16. She's driving herself to the beach now and all of that. So,
Yeah.
you know, um, all the
And
responsibilities are on us now for the most part.
yeah. Do the kids do anything like contribute as well?
Um, when they're asked,
Yeah, because I was going to
and
say, I'm sure there'd be some pushback from the children.
yeah, and when they're home, I mean, look, they're teenagers, and you have to, you got to roll with that. Sometimes
Yeah,
they make it, something so simple, they'll make it worth not your while to ask,
right.
because it's kind of how that goes sometimes.
So
But
like swimming with the current is just like, okay, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna go
well,
there.
sometimes look, with the kids, child rearing, that's a whole different situation. You have to decide, more and more, when to tell your kids, go figure it out, go figure it out for
Mm,
yourself. That's
mm-hmm.
probably some of the best parenting advice I could
Yeah.
give. And then at other times when there's a battle of wills, you make a choice. I'm the current. I'm not.
Mm,
I'm not
mm-hmm.
going to back down on this. So
Interesting.
how
Yeah.
difficult do you want to make this for yourself
Yeah.
is really
Yeah.
the question.
That's funny that you said that about like go figure it out because my parents broke up very young. My dad left when I was 6 months old. He had an affair, and I said to my mum, "How come you never?" She never once badmouthed him, never once. And I said, "How come you never said anything bad about dad?" And she said, "I think I've told the story again. I keep repeating myself, but she said, I figured you'd figure it out on your own." She's like,
Ah,
it's pretty clear. I think I didn't think you'd miss it. And I was like, you were right. And she goes, yeah, I don't need to be that person. I don't need to badmouth him. I don't want to be that person. So
that's wise.
yeah,
Well, look, I
very.
mean,
She's very wise.
that's being mindful of energy, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's the same thing in and around. I know we're kind of jumping around a bit here, but forgiveness, I think it's an important point, and it's hard to get out of our own way in and around forgiving one another. And sometimes people don't deserve. And I'm out of a domestic relationship here in the moment, but some people who don't deserve our forgiveness,
Right.
you give it anyway because it's really about you. And
Yes. 100%.
you why would you let them get one over on you by having something, something stuck in your crawl about what they did to you? That's just, and that's how you get your ego out of the way, is say, well, I'm not going to let this bother me. And
Mm.
your
Doesn't
mom
mean you
sounds
have to
like,
like him or let him back into your life.
right.
That's different.
or,
But yeah,
or yeah, yeah, or actually like resolve it to get, I owe someone an apology, or
yeah,
yield. Just
yeah,
do it within yourself, forgive them within yourself. It doesn't have to be,
yeah,
you know
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting as well. Even yeah, saying I'm sorry. So many people find that so difficult and it's such a mending word. Those words are just like can heal, it's just so respectful to go, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I did that." And I think that if you're going to
Yeah,
say sorry, you've really got to mean it and not do it again. It's not just like, oh, I'm
right,
saying sorry and I don't mean it. I'm going to keep doing it. It's like if you say sorry, that means you're making amends and then you're also changing your behavior. You're not
right. At
just
least going to try harder. I
yeah.
don't really have a hard time. I mean, I have much to have to say sorry for, because what do I do wrong? I'm just kidding. But the point is I don't have a problem saying sorry. The same thing in around forgiveness, because it's about me. I mean, by not saying I'm sorry, do I want to be upset for another couple of days? Because so I'll suck it up
Yeah, right.
out of self preservation, just because I don't want to be ticked off.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So, coming back to your book, there's
Yeah,
another theme of the book involves filters. Now, I think I know what filters mean within a certain context, but I'm really interested to hear how you talk about them in the book. And yeah, what is it? What does that involve?
sure. Well, I mean, look, we all encounter life as any number of ways. We all have so much information coming at us at all times, and there's only so much that we can take in. and really, convert into our own understanding. So certainly perception is the first one that comes into play, and that's an early chapter as well. Uh, and it's the same thing goes for relationships. It's, like two rights don't necessarily make a wrong. Two people can hear the same situation a different way or perceive it a different way, and neither be wrong in the way that they perceive it. And that's how you also, again, focusing on the relationship theme, give each other, some benefit of the doubt. But also the fact that perception, and this also comes, Talia, from the depression aspect here, because um, optimism and pessimism apply to the exact same set of circumstances. And so that has a lot to do with choice. And again, outside of a chemical imbalance, while we can't necessarily help what it is that happens to us, we certainly do have a lot of control over how we react and what it is and how we choose to perceive things. And with perception, we assume everything that we take in is the truth and fact based, but in fact it's just an interpretation. So it's hard to step outside of ourselves and recognize, like, maybe I didn't get it right, or
Mm.
I'm not a great listener. Maybe I
Yeah.
didn't pick something up, or I'm
Yeah.
reading body language that I shouldn't, or there's all kinds of different mechanisms that are at play all the
Mm-hmm.
time around perception. And so I think that recognizing that filter makes it a lot easier to give one another the benefit of the doubt. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt, about wondering if I did something wrong or I said something that was dumb, and you're
Mm.
beat yourself up about something and you have no reason to,
Mm-hmm.
because whoever it was you said it to never thought that. So
Mm.
again, that's a whole aspect of uncertainty and just filters. Another is mood health, and that does, get into the depression side. And uh, I have, naturally, a lot of lived experience with this, and having contended with a number of bouts myself. Fortunately, haven't since 2013. I lost my brother Dave in 2012 to his depression,
Oh,
and he
I'm
he
so
took his
sorry. Yeah.
life. And again, we've all been through all the things that we have in our lives. That certainly, sent me, for a tough year,
Mm.
to follow. But having said that, um, I I've learned, through experience, how to deal with it and, catch it. The same as we talk about earn confidence and worry. And before you sink too much into the quicksand, that experience of uh of depression, do the things that you need to get yourself out. And so recognize that, again, your mood and your brain chemistry, really kind of a biochemical reality that we're in, all of us, at any given time, seeing things through the lens of, am I having a mild depression right now? And sometimes you don't realize it until you're actually out of it. And that's the tough part about a low level depression, is it's just, it's sneaky in that way.
Mm.
And so recognize that filter as well, and the things that you need to do, like exercise, like reach out to people who lift you up, go to your go-to coping skills, your favorite music, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
know what that is, and really parent yourself and be proactive so that you can keep that filter healthy. And then the other is really back to earn confidence, and a lot about being present, because so many of us are, unfortunately, just kind of the way that our subconscious works. We always have to kind of be practicing mindfulness to bring ourselves back into the moment. But a lot of the rest of the time, we are caught up in that conversation we had earlier today, or something shouldn't be worrying about, if we were applying our own confidence. And what it is that we're doing in and around filters, that are we perceiving something through the now, versus are we taking things in through, um, making an assumption, for example, would be would be a filter that, leads to phantom arguments in relationships and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, um, when people are prone to make assumptions there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah. When we make stuff up in our head that isn't true. You know what really
Yeah.
sprung to mind when you were speaking before was feedback as well. I remember, I don't want to preface this by saying I only take feedback that could be considered hurtful from people that I love and trust, which is really, really important. But somebody that I loved and trust when I was younger told me that I was not a good listener. And I remember at the time, I was like, oh, it was like a knife to the heart, right? I was like, oh my gosh, this is really hurtful, but I really trust him and he's not saying it to hurt me. He's saying it because that's how he feels. And so I remember from that day on going, I don't want to be a bad listener. I want to, so getting
Right.
that feedback really helped me. But if somebody who I didn't like you or was being malicious about it had did the same thing, I wouldn't have got that lesson from it. So,
Yeah, and it sounds like there's somebody who probably knew what they were doing, from making a critical point for the benefit of helping you in that way. And look, I mean, how many of us actually approach listening as a skill, which it is, and then practice it
yeah,
as you would a skill? Probably not
yeah,
enough of us, I would
yeah,
say. Something we can always be better at, no doubt.
yeah. And like, yeah, just so many little parts of this one skill that, and it's so crucial to like
Right.
everything.
Right, and back it goes right back to perception. It's a huge part of it in terms
hmm
of relationships, and we could do a whole conversation about that alone. And I certainly speak to that as well, among
hmm
all things. Yeah,
Um, let's talk a little bit about your depression. Did you get help with that? And I mean, you've gone through some really tough times in your life that you've
right.
already described.
Yeah,
So it makes sense that you would be feeling, I don't know,
yeah,
mild to quite severe depression. How did you go about getting treated or dealing with that, coping
sure.
with that?
Yeah, I'm very comfortable speaking to it. I mean, you're familiar with Clubhouse, for
Mm,
example. I mean, I
yeah.
founded the Defeating Depression Club on Clubhouse. I just ran a
Mm,
room about an hour and a half ago, and do every Monday here. Um, so I'll talk about this wholly. I mean, for me personally, I mean, I just didn't get the best gene pool. I mean, it runs in my family, and I didn't realize it at the time, but my early teens, I was experiencing some of it. Um, in and around loneliness was certainly a contributor as well. I'm 5 years behind the next brother, and on and on, and you know, just the way things were then. But because I was playing hockey, I was around the guys and I was, working out, and so
right.
I wasn't really in tune with it. It wasn't until my early 20s that I had that first bout. And it's again, it's the experience of, like, your synapses are just, like, not firing as well. It's like like, just that's that feeling of sinking in the quicksand. That's just really the best way I can describe it. And to me, certainly, um, because it's chemical related, and not everyone is an advocate for a pharmaceutical intervention, but I do, rely on medication. Now, in the early years, I went on and then I went off and then on and off. And I had this cycle that went for a period of years until I realized, I just really, I have to stay on it.
Mm,
And even then, it can be a challenge sometimes, in terms of, you get to a point where, you're on something for a period of time and it's not as effective, and then you have to find different ways to manage things. And for me, I since 2013, what I found really helpful, in terms of defeating depression, is a 3-day rule, where I know that just any given day in life, I'm going to get knocked down. Being an entrepreneur is just par for the course.
yeah.
Or bad weather or anything, I just feel effect of it. But if I get to a third day, for whatever reason that is, I will do the things I mentioned before, and I won't let myself lay around and any of that, and go to my go-to coping skills. And I actually have some resources that I give away. A depression defeater that is on my site. People are welcome to it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the
Yeah,
short answer.
wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that I've had a few friends let me know that they're on depression medication and that it's really saved their life. And and changed everything for them. So I think it's really great that you mentioned that and that we normalize it, because there's actually a lot more people than we think on
Oh,
depression
absolutely. I
medication.
don't think anyone's really, you know, one way, shape, or form untouched by, some kind of, mental health affliction, whether it's them personally or someone in their family. I mean, and ironically, I mean, I'm a relentlessly positive person.
Mm-hmm.
So, depression aside, that's just kind of positivity, that's just my reflex.
Mm-hmm.
Again, controlling how it is we react to things.
Mm-hmm. Matt, I've got one more question before we wrap up.
Sure.
Is it possible to reprogram our subconscious?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, I speak from lived experience. I've certainly studied this to a degree, and you may be familiar with neuro-linguistic programming
Mm-hmm.
(NLP), and I work with a coach, and I've done some NLP like recordings and things that you listen to, and really try to pinpoint some of the things that are in your subconscious that you really want to deal with. So when you say reprogram, the answer is yes, but I think you have to be very pinpointed about what that is. You can't just be like, I want to replace my subconscious. But that was actually the theme of the room tonight that I ran here in the clubhouse room was by coincidence reprogramming your subconscious, and we definitely got into that quite a bit. So it's very fresh. But
Yeah.
yes, I mean, I think absolutely, and anybody who's interested in learning more about that, um, I absolutely believe in the NLP practices, and there's plenty of great practitioners out there. Reach out and speak to a professional about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Matt, thank you so much for being here today. It has been an absolute pleasure. And I know you mentioned a few places, but if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Talia. Well, easy enough to find me, mattzinman.com. And on there is really easy to find your way over to the mood health page and all of those resources that are there for free. Self-care report card is in there for free, email series. But I also really want to encourage you to see the life upgrade, because that is really uh, it's there's nothing like it, because it's all originated by me over the past number of months. I've just been hard at work at it, and if you're somebody who is looking to uh, up your game and have a life upgrade, please check it out. And I hope that they find it helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for everybody listening, you can find all the links mentioned in this episode at rebellove.com/EP40. EP40, that is. Matt, thank you again. I really, really appreciate you being here. And
It's a
I love
pleasure.
your cute cat in the background too.
It's funny. I didn't realize she was in here.
I know, I
Uh,
saw her head poke her head out before. It
yeah,
was
yeah.
really
I
cute.
was like, I was just, okay. Paisley's in here. Yeah, one of three. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And also, what's your Clubhouse handle in case people want to find you on Clubhouse?
Matt Zinman.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So Defeating Depression Club is in there, and then I'm actually starting my podcast on. I'm doing live Q&A this week for the
Oh,
first time.
perfect. Great, great.
So,
I just got on Clubhouse. I love it. So,
did you
yeah.
reach out?
And I'm late to the party because I'm on Android. So,
Right, right, right. Yeah,
so
no. Let me know, Talia, for sure,
yeah.
and encourage everyone. It's a great platform.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it is. Thank you again. Thanks for listening to the Rebel Love podcast, the podcast about love, sex, relationships, and money. If you like this episode, please support us by subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. And find all the details of this episode and more at rebellove.com/podcast.